gonna text Kelly just to.
Don't have my suit on today.
Let's see. Okay.
Do we know, is Darwin joining us?
He's on right now.
Okay, good. Got him. I see him now. I don't see him, but I.
Marty, do you want to say hi to Suzanne? Come here. Say hi.
I love when you do this. Hi, Marley.
Hey, Marty, say hi.
Hi, Marley.
Who's that? Do you hear him? Who's that?
Betty.
You hear him? I know.
Aw, I miss you sometimes.
So Darren, real quickly, I mentioned this the other day. We don't have the raise hand thing that we have on the county meeting. How do you want to handle that for the mayor to acknowledge if somebody wants to speak up, so we're not talking over each other? You're on mute, Darren, so I can't hear you.
1 second, Val. Hey, Rob, can you send an invite really quick to Kelly? Please.
Yeah, give me a second.
She's in a different meeting, so she needs an invite.
Got
You
it.
can send it to her quick by email. Okay, Val, what was your question? I'm sorry.
Oh, never mind. I see the raise hand in if you have the participants in a block here. So the mayor knows who to, we don't want to be talking over each other is my point. So how are we going to sequence it? I don't know.
Well, the panelists are the only ones that talk without public comment. So it's going to be, it would end up just being, you could keep it open and you just essentially use the same cues that you would in a normal meeting, if that's what you mean.
Yeah, I'm not going to stress out over that. I was just wondering if you had any procedure or something. No
Yeah,
big deal.
if anyone needs to speak, just speak up. We'll try to manage it the best we can. I don't want to leave anybody out, and I know what you're saying about we don't want people talking over each other, but I think we'll be able to manage.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Let me just make sure, Rob, you're good on sending that to Kelly?
Kelly's on.
I'm here.
Oh,
Okay,
okay.
good.
I was
All
working
right.
on it.
I think I think we're ready to get going then.
Is that my cue?
It is, Mayor.
Hello, Neil.
Okay. Hey, Kelly. Good afternoon.
Good to see
Okay.
your face.
This meeting's called to order, and we'll start with Susan, the roll call.
Thank you. Mayor Levy,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Carr,
Here.
Councilmember Case,
I'm here. Thank you.
Councilmember Labar,
Here.
Councilmember Nacarado,
Here.
Councilmember Saunier is absent. Councilmember Sawyer is absent. We have 5 council members present. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Suze. We'll move on to the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you, Rob. And I think everyone's ready, so here we go. I pledge allegiance
Allegiance to the flag
Flag of the
of the
United
United
States
States of America and
to
to
the
the
republic
republic
for which it stands,
One
one nation,
God,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty
liberty,
and justice for
justice
all.
For all.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we move on to ceremonies, presentations, and appointments, which I believe we have none. And then we'll move on to additions, deletions, or corrections. We have one addition to the agenda this afternoon, and that is the acceptance. That is the acceptance of Noel Sawyer's resignation as of last evening. as a council member. Before we vote on this, well, we'll vote on it first, and we'll have some discussion. If anyone thinks there's discussion needed, I'll just preface by saying I spoke with Noel at length this morning, and he certainly has his mind made up. He's enjoyed his time on council. He has no qualms with anybody, so don't let that get in anybody's mind. It's just time for him and his family and his business for him to move forward. So I think it's important that we respect his decision and accept his resignation and move forward. So Jace, I'm going to ask you, should we vote on this first and then decide the process for moving forward?
That's fine, Your Honor.
Okay, let's do that now. If I could have a motion, please.
I'll move. So moved.
Marlon, thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
And a second. Okay, thank you. Suzanne?
Carr,
Yes.
Case,
Yes.
Labar,
Yes.
Nacarado,
Yes.
Levy.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries 5-0.
Thank
Mayor,
you.
may I interject something?
Please do.
Thank you, sir. I've had a bunch of questions from the public about the legality of this meeting, the notice, the special meeting rules, and those things. I would enjoy Jason weighing in on those if he wouldn't mind. I don't know if this is the appropriate place to do that, but I know there's a bunch of public that's contacted me and challenging whether we're in a legal meeting and the urgency situation. Jason, maybe you could, if Your Honor will allow, if he could comment on that.
Well, Val, let's do one thing first. Since we're on this issue with Noel, I'd like to finish that and then
Oh, I'm
move
sorry.
forward, unless
I'm
that
sorry.
doesn't make sense. So,
I'm sorry, I
Jace,
didn't realize, yeah.
so yeah, we'll get that in for sure. Jace, if you'll speak to the process for moving forward.
All right, so similar to what we had last fall, this is my suggestion. Ultimately, council has the determination as to how this process should move forward. That said, last fall when we had a resignation and a vacancy, the city council allowed about a 30-day time frame for applicants to submit their application and intent letter to run for council for the appointment. If we were to follow a similar pattern, and looking at the calendar earlier this afternoon, if council so desires to set that cutoff for applications to be May 13th, that would allow a couple of days for staff to consolidate, order, and distribute those applications as a part of the regular packet for the May 21st meeting. And that way then council could hold interviews at that May 21st regular meeting to make that appointment. At this point, it's my understanding in talking with city clerk and city manager that we don't have anything scheduled on that agenda. So unlike last year where we called a special meeting to make sure we had ample time, there's nothing on that agenda, so it should fit. And then in the case that we're still under these restrictions operating via video conference, those interviews would be held similar format to what we're on now, so that the public can be involved in observing the interview process. So
Does
that's my
anyone have any-
suggestion, but it's
I'm sorry, Jace, go ahead.
so those are my suggestions based on the way we've done it previously, but ultimately council has the authority to determine what process you'd like to see.
Council, anybody have any objections to following the same path as we did before?
None here.
No.
I'm here.
Okay, Jace, do we need a motion?
I don't know that we need a motion. It's just as much as making sure staff has got the direction that we need. and we'll get it posted to the website as soon as possible and move forward with that understanding.
Sounds good. And as long as applications are in by the 13th, the new council will have plenty of time to read those and look over them prior to the 21st meeting. Is that my understanding?
Correct, Your Honor.
Okay, that sounds good. Okay, we get that behind us. I appreciate it. And so does Noel. He's put in a long 6 years and has worked hard, and, we agree and we disagree, but the guy's typically always been there and always given his best. So, I just got a lot of respect for the guy, and, hopefully we'll be able to have somebody come out of the community that will do as good a job as he did. Okay, move on. And I think maybe this would be the time, Val, to voice your concerns and talk about the issues that you've heard about with this meeting.
So I think Jason's aware of this from other anecdotal evidence, but people are interested in the legality of the notice. We have late notice on it. Charter section 3.8 talks about various timelines and things like that. If you could challenge the legality of the special meeting, if you could address that, please, Jason, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure. So as far as a meeting notice, generally, the Colorado Open Meetings Law requires it doesn't actually provide a specific date standard. It's case law that dictates that at least 24 hours in advance of a meeting is when proper notice is being held. So we've noticed this meeting yesterday, well within that 24-hour time frame. A special meeting can be called by council for a variety of reasons at any time. My understanding is that the other piece that some citizens have concerns with, and let me pull it up here, in regards to whether or not the city council should be meeting at this point, has to do with the election that was held yesterday. The charter states that at the first meeting after the election is when city council would be duly seated, and that's the election. I'd like to point out is a process that takes several months. It's not a specific day. And so ultimately at this point, all of the results are unofficial. We're still awaiting some ballots to be turned in for UACAVA voters, and those have yet to be canvassed by the municipal judges. Will happen this year. And so until those votes are finalized and the election is completely finished, then the election is not over. So even though we had election day yesterday, the election is still in process until those results are finalized and there's authority to actually make that official determination. And I don't know if that answers the questions that you've been hearing.
So in your opinion, we've given sufficient 24-hour notice?
Correct, because this was posted yesterday.
Thank you.
And Val, let me just ask you, if we would have this meeting tomorrow, for instance, what would be, let's put it this way, what would be the reason to put it off tomorrow if it was, say, 23 and a half hours and we couldn't do it? I mean, is there any real reason, or is it just people unhappy with the process?
I'm just asking the question.
I get it. Okay. Thank you very much, and we'll move forward.
Excuse me, Mayor Levy, it's Suzanne.
Hi, Suzanne.
I just need to make one correction to a statement Jason made. I have been in touch with Mayor Levy, and as the charter says, I can have either the municipal judge or the current mayor, as long as they're not running for re-election, canvass the election. And Mayor Levy has agreed to do that with me. So Mayor Levy will be canvassing the election.
Thank you, Mayor
Suze.
Levy.
Thank you
for doing that, Neil.
correction. I got to tell you guys, I know you all feel the same. I can hear everybody a lot better from a long way away than I can when we're sitting in the same room. Okay.
Hey,
Um,
you do what you have to do and don't overdo it, buddy, okay?
No, that's all good.
I can just say it's really good to see you and to hear you.
Oh,
Awesome.
thanks. It's,
I've been
trust
missed.
me, trust me,
Absolutely.
it's good to be here because it's been a real struggle. But
Yeah.
that's a whole nother issue. We'll put that behind us. Let's move on. Suze, we have nothing on the consent calendar.
That's correct, Mayor.
Then I'll let you lead the public comment on items not on the agenda because I don't have that list. Do we have anybody signed up for that?
I do. I have one person signed up for public comments not on the agenda, and that is Councilmember-elect Jim Paff.
Okay. And is he with us? Does he have an email?
He does.
How are we
I
going
think
to discuss
Rob
his
can-
concern?
Rob is, yeah, he just raised his hand. I think Rob can give him permission. Oh, yeah, he can now. Okay.
Okay, Mr.
Rob-
Paff, welcome.
Thanks. You can hear me then?
Yes.
Great. So I want to, I didn't know it would be brought up beforehand, but I wanted to extend discussion related to Section 3.8 and special meetings. The Section 3.8 says very clearly, obviously, the process by which a meeting may be called at the request of the mayor request of the, may be called by the clerk on the written request of the mayor or any two members of the council. But the 24-hour notice thing, I'm not clear that it was fully completed because notice is given to the council, but also written notice is to be posted in 3 public places. Also, no business can be transacted unless the same has been stated in the notice of such meeting. So I have a series of questions related to that. Before I get to that, I do want to, Jason mentioned his statement on Article 2, Section 2.5 of the Charter, which actually has 2 shall clauses to it. One statement that the elected representatives shall be sworn in at the next meeting. And there's another shall clause that says that current members shall maintain their terms until the new members are sworn in. Those are competing clauses, and it is potential that the first shall clause that I mentioned supersedes the second one because of the absolute requirement for elected members to be sworn in at the next council meeting, which is obvious and for apparent reasons not possible to take place today. But questions regarding Section 3.8, why are we having this meeting at this time? Why is that so necessary? And how can this particular group of agenda items be absolutely necessary to be dealt with at this time instead of when a new council is seated at the next meeting? Secondly, I'm curious which 3 public places that 24-hour notice was given, and at what specific time were each of those 3 public places given that notice and put it online? And thirdly, at what time was the last update of the backup materials for the current issues that are before the council today? When was the very last and final update on each of those issues given to council members, and when were they placed on the website?
Jason will defer to you.
So I don't know when and where those was posted. I don't take part in that process. I apologize.
I
You're
can
on.
I can answer. This is Suzanne. I can answer the posting questions, but I can't tell you the times of the postings because, as everyone knows, I was in the middle of an election doing this and doing postings at the same time. But the notice we typically post, and when we have a special meeting, we typically post in 3 public places, and that's the police department, the cultural center, and City Hall. So yesterday we posted in the police department, we posted at City Hall. I did not post at the Cultural Center because they are closed. So instead, we posted it on the website, and those were my 3 locations for posting.
Thanks, Suzanne.
You're
Jason, do you
welcome.
want to go over the questions?
As far as when was the last packet or update to the packet provided, that was this afternoon. However, if you look at section 3.8, you can call a special meeting. There's nothing in 3.8 that requires that a packet has to be completely finalized and that no updates may occur to the packet information. The agenda has not changed since it was posted yesterday. The agenda items and the place or the reasons for stating the meeting are the exact same. We had some additional updates to the resolution that were provided. The resolution's not final. The resolution is here to be discussed this evening. And so there's nothing in the requirements that say that it needs to have a packet prepared beforehand.
Mr. Paff?
And my third question was, why is it necessary to undertake this particular group of agenda items at this time instead of waiting for the new council to be seated at the next meeting?
And Jason, you can answer that one. I think, again, this is just in terms of the new council isn't seated till the election is over and duly seated. So it's not like there would necessarily even need to be an emergency to have this meeting. This is business. So Jason, you can elaborate.
There's no requirement of the charter that there be some sort of special need. It's just a matter of having the ability to call a meeting. Again, if I'll go to the same sentence that Mr. Paff references under section 2.5 terms of office, and I'll read the complete sentence because it has some important context. It says the terms of office of mayor and council member, comma, hereafter to be elected in accordance with the provision of this charter, comma, shall commence on taking their oath of office in the first ensuing meeting of the city council held after the election in the year elected, comma, and shall continue during the term for which they shall have been elected until their successors have been elected and duly seated. As mentioned previously, the election is still in process. While we had closed the polls yesterday, there are still ballots outstanding. The results are not official. The election is not currently over, and therefore, based on the plain reading of this section 2.5, this meeting does not require the seating of a new council. And if we were to seat a new council and have some of those results changed or be found to be erroneous, we would be unseating a council before the results or after the results become finalized.
Mr. Mayor, may I make a comment, please?
Please.
I just wanted to say that the main reason for our meeting today is to address a resolution to try to provide some assistance to our folks in our community with regards to the COVID virus and the impacts that it's having on our businesses and our citizens. So that's the main reason for our meeting today, and I think it's pretty urgent. So thank you for allowing me to talk.
Anybody else?
Mayor, if I could wrap up, we did contact council members in compliance with the Colorado Open Meetings Law. We did not have any meetings with more than 2 council members. As you all are aware, to discuss whether or not this item was important enough to push forward. And at that point, in those individual meetings, we found that 6 council members determined that this meeting should be held so that we could move forward with getting these potential relief to the business framework started. And so that's why staff is moving forward as instructed. And ultimately, no decisions have been made. And that's why we're here this evening, is to have those discussions.
Right.
Thank you, Jason.
I'd just like to add really quickly that 2 council members, no matter what, can call a special session or an emergency meeting and then have the 24-hour notice. So even if it seemed like it was some erroneous topic to the public, if council felt that there was a matter important enough that they wanted to get together to discuss, we can call those meetings.
Thank you,
And that's a
Hillary.
good point. And to what Mr. Paff is saying, it may be wise moving forward to change the charter in this regard. You could argue that this is a special meeting, and you could argue that the intent of the charter is that the new council would be seated at the next regularly scheduled council meeting. And so I don't know if that makes sense to anybody else, but it does to me. And so maybe that's something moving forward you would want to consider changing, because you have emergency special meetings, and it just happens to fall in between this time where we've had the election, albeit it's not complete yet, and the next regularly scheduled council meeting. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Also, it's semi-erroneous to me because I wasn't a part of the election. I maintain my council seat, period. So I am still an acting elected official regardless of the election results. So if I decide that I need to call an emergency meeting or a special session, I will contact the currently seated council members because their seats are not gone just because the election occurred. My seat is not erroneous because an election occurred. So if I need to call a meeting, I can still call a meeting. I don't have to wait for the newly elected people to be sworn in. And it's a shall, not a must.
Makes sense to me.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr.
Mr.
Pfaff,
Mayor, may I
do you
interject?
have comment?
Yeah, just a quick comment. Pardon my dog. I guess my question was not completely answered. I was asking about the need. I was asking the council why the specific need for the particular agenda items on here, not related to the legal matter of notification. I got an explanation for Resolution 859. I am curious what the need for Resolution 858 was as part of this meeting, and I would like the council to address that for me, if you would.
Jace,
I'll speak.
please.
It's a resolution that we've been looking at, and it's in a format that is up for consideration. It doesn't necessarily mean that it will pass, fail, or be continued. We have an opportunity to have a meeting and to confer with ourselves about something that's been ongoing. That would be the response that I have, and we'll see where it goes this evening. But that's the way I see it. We've been looking at this, and it's in a draft form for our consideration and discussion. And we'll see where that goes. Thanks. Jason, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No worries. I just again point out from a legal perspective, there's no requirement that anything have any sort of special necessity or emergency to be on a special meeting agenda. So if council so desires to put this forward, they have that ability to do so, similar to what Councilmember Labar was just stating. That said, several months ago, I was asked to work on this. I've been working on this for several months. We met beginning of March in a work session, went over all these changes. At that point, I was tasked with bringing this back to the next meeting that council had. The next meeting that council had, I was in Belize, I believe at the time, and not available because we were looking at an emergency declaration, and so it wasn't appropriate at that point because it wasn't finished. However, again, council was approached with whether or not they wanted this as a part of this meeting last week in those individual meetings, and the majority of council stated that they'd like this to be brought forward for consideration. So that's why we're here with a Resolution 858.
Anybody else like to comment?
I can speak about the utilities issue because I've been talking about it with council individually for almost 3 weeks now. I've been asking what the city can do to help our citizens and businesses in the event that they lost their jobs or their businesses shut down. And I thought that it was important that the city step up and offer some kind of help in some way, shape, or form, because if we lose our current businesses up here, it's not only going to hurt our community, it's going to hurt the city as well. So I've been pushing to have a discussion amongst all of us about this particular topic.
And I appreciate that, Hillary, and not trying to
Me too.
defend anybody, but, somebody might say, Mr. Paff might say, what's the difference between having that discussion today and a week from now? I think that's the answer that he's kind of looking for. I hate to speak for him, but I know there's a sense of urgency here, and we're all concerned about our businesses. No one more than myself, because I am one of those.
So am I.
But no, a lot of us are. And so I appreciate the urgency, but I can see where, I can see the other side of this also. So, Mr. Paff, I appreciate your comments and your concerns. I think we did the best we could to answer your questions, and I think it's time to move on.
Mr. Mayor, may I just briefly ask one very quick question?
Sure.
With your patience. Thank you. I have heard, I totally concede the council's ability to bring these issues up when it has handled properly based on the city charter. The one question that has not yet been asked is why the ordinance, resolution 858 was I understand the ability to bring it up. I'm asking specifically, what was the specific purpose of bringing resolution 858 into this meeting when, from my perspective, I don't see it as an absolute necessity to handle at this meeting. I can see some necessity for 859. My specific question is why it was urgent to bring up 858 at this meeting.
Mayor, if I can, I think I could address it. I think Jason can too. I think just reiterate the point that was made by Councilmember LeVar and Case that I mean, this was an issue that was brought. It could be considered today because there's still sitting council members. They would like to see these issues addressed today. It doesn't have to be put off to any time. It's still current business for the council members who aren't necessarily on their way weren't reelected or weren't elected for the next term. So I think it has been an issue that's been ongoing for several months. It deals with decorum and just continuing to improve policies and procedures. I know Mayor Pro Tem Carr has also, a lot of these initiatives have been a discussion with Mayor Pro Tem Carr as well in terms of what he would like to see and just improving decorum in general. I think the city council has been making great strides to improve that over the last 2 years, and this is just a part of formalizing that. It doesn't prohibit the future city council to come in and make additional improvements to it if that's the case. Jason, did you have, if you don't mind, Mayor, Jason, chime in real quick?
Please.
Again, I guess to summarize, I was directed by council to bring this forward, and so that's why it's here.
Mm-hmm. You know what?
Mr. Mayor.
Let me say something. I'll be really frank. Val and I worked very hard on procedures for council because when I was elected, there were hardly any. And it was really important to me that we put this together for the sense of professionalism for the council. It was still really important to me, and I'll be very frank why we'd asked for it to be heard today too, because we had a very controversial person who could have possibly been elected to council. And we wanted to make sure that we had proper procedures in place so that everybody knew what the rules were and how to play by them. We didn't know who would be elected and who wouldn't. And as far as I'm concerned, it was important to have these heard and have them discussed so that they could be in place if we needed them to be. And that's really frank on my part, and that's the truth. And that's why they were being heard today. It wasn't Jason pushing it. It wasn't anybody pushing it. And I can tell you that Mayor Pro Tem also wanted those procedures heard and pushed in the event that we would have a controversial candidate put in place. And that's the honest truth. So that's why they're on today. It doesn't mean we have to vote on them, but we needed to be able to talk about them in the event that we had somebody highly controversial sitting next to us.
Mr. Mayor,
I think
I would like to.
I think
Go
that's
ahead, Val.
council's. I think that's council's prerogative. So Hillary, I appreciate that. Sorry to interrupt. Who's next?
I
No.
was,
Val, go
raised-
ahead.
I did the raise hand thing over here. I don't know if anybody else sees it, but thank you.
Ben.
I think going to this question is that citizen Jim Paff has raised is why the urgency for this meeting. I know we're calling this a special meeting. I recognize item under new business 858 to have some urgency. I among others have been harping on this for months, as you know. All of council's heard me talking about it. I think the point he's taking is that council procedures seems to be like it's not that urgent. And I know we're not calling this an emergency meeting or anything. I believe that's the hang up on this situation, and I understand that. When we do move to that item, I'll have a couple more comments, but I think that's the gist of why the question is coming up.
Thanks, Val. Unless anyone has anything that's insistent right now, we're going to move on.
Your
Thank you
Mayor,
for your patience.
Please
Mr. Mayor.
do.
Mayor, if I
Okay.
could, I want to make sure we have some citizen comments. They may not have already been answered, but I want to make sure that the public's getting their ample input. Under the question and answer section, we had some things typed. I don't-
Jason, if you don't mind, those comments are directly related to 859, resolution 859. And we can, if we want to, we can do public comment period at that point and answer those directly.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to just make one comment with regards to the policies and procedures for council, if I could.
Please.
Very short. I just want to know that this is a dynamic document. And we've amended it already after putting it in place. And so don't think, any of you, Mr. Paff or any of you, think that this is in stone for the rest of our lives.
It's just a resolution.
It morphs and it becomes even more useful as we learn and we add to it. Mr. Carr and Mr. Hillary, Miss LeBar have done a great job in getting the document started. We've done a lot of work on it, and remember that it's not set in stone. It's dynamic as times change. So I just want to give a little bit of assurance that it's not the way it's going to be the rest of our lives. So thank you, sir.
Thank you. All right, Suze, we'll go back to you. What's next?
you.
Any public comment on items not on the agenda?
No, the other public comments are on the two resolutions. So I will hold those until we finish, till you open up public comment for the resolutions.
Okay, sounds good. If that's the case, then we will move on to agenda item number 7, unfinished business. And Jace, we'll throw it back to you.
All right. So at our last work session, council gave me a lot of feedback and input of changes that they would like to see to the council rules of procedures, some of which I didn't have answers to at the time, but I've spent time looking at multiple other jurisdictions and some of their best practices and things. And so what you have before you is a red line version, so that way it's easy to track where those changes have occurred. I would point out that some of the things have not been included on purpose. I did not go through and change any of the in the table of contents, as an example. I didn't change any of the page numbers at this time because I didn't know for sure how much of this was going to be approved or how much of it might change or be added or taken away. So I didn't want to continually have to update page numbers, but would leave that until after council's determined which of these edits that they are willing to take, whether it's all of them or a piece of them or otherwise. But those, it shows up in purple on my screen, but all of the capitalized language is what's being added. There are a few strike throughs where we removed language. Most of it's self-explanatory, but I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Questions, council? Does anyone not agree with approving the resolution as is? And if so, why not?
If I may, Mr. Mayor,
Please.
Valcar. So I haven't had a chance to go through these with a fine tooth comb. I recognize we just got the latest version. I, for one, would like more time to study that, but that's just my personal style, as you know. So I'm reluctant to go forward at this meeting particularly. I think Jason's done a great job in incorporating some changes. They're extensive though. They're not just typos and things. So that would be my only comment is I would like more time to look at these.
Anybody else? Well, council, what do you think?
If I may, this is Dar.
Go ahead, Dar.
I actually concur with Val on this, with Mr. Carr on this issue. I have read Jason's proposal through a couple of times, and I don't really have any real big complaints, but I wouldn't say that I've digested everything either. So I'm not in a big hurry to get this done. On the other hand, if that's what council wants to do here today, I'm okay with that too, but I'm just saying I could use a little more time to study it.
Council, what's the downside of putting this off for a couple of weeks at least? None?
I don't have anything. I'm good with it, but I've read it a couple times. It seems to be what we have for the moment. But I have no heartburn either way.
And probably not many changes for any of us, but
No.
to allow everybody to get up to speed, I think it's only fair. And so I'm going to recommend that we table this until either the meeting on April 16th or the meeting, I believe, is it the 3rd, Suze?
Yeah, we need to table it, I believe, to a date certain. So we'll have to decide what date council would like to table it until.
No, I understand that. I just don't know what the first Thursday in May
Oh.
is.
Okay, just give me 1
I
second.
believe it's the 7th.
The
Yeah,
7th.
that would be
Thanks,
my
Doug.
recommendation is the May meeting.
Okay, then I'm just gonna, for the record, suggest that we table this motion until the meeting of May 7th and see if we can get consensus on that and move forward.
I say yes, Val.
I would move. Do we need a motion, Suzanne, to table it to a date certain?
I think we should do a motion and vote on it.
I will make a
Yes.
motion to table resolution 858 to May 7th. meeting.
Second?
Thank you, Dar. Thank you, Kelly and Suzanne.
Labar,
Yes.
Nacarado,
Yes.
Levy,
Yes,
Carr,
Yes.
Case.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries 5-0.
okay, thank you very much. We have no ordinances on initial posting and we have no public hearings today, so
Excuse me, Mayor Levy.
yes.
Do you still want to, we did have public comment for the resolution that was just tabled. Do you want to take that public comment or not?
No, I don't think it's proper to take it now
Okay,
because we're not having that discussion. Those folks can come back on May 7th and make comment at that time.
okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure they got acknowledged. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for doing that. Okay, so we're on to new business and approving resolution 859 and the major reason that we're here today. And Darren, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. As we've discussed tonight or today, and we've had multiple discussions individually, over the last 3 to 4 weeks, I wanted to touch on a couple of things in terms of what staff has done to look at potential business relief measures for COVID-19 impacts to our local businesses. We have examined a lot of different courses of action. And in fact, they've even got some additional one today that I will bring up for consideration. But the city looked at the spectrum of our revenues and our ability to provide business relief to our businesses. And as part of that, we looked at the general fund, trying to figure out what we could do to provide relief to our businesses without having a significant impact on our ability to provide essential services and public safety to the community. And also looking at the situation where we know we're going to see some changes in our revenues in the general fund side. And so what could we do for our local businesses? Specifically, we were looking at local businesses because they're the ones impacted by Public Health Order 2024 and the closure and or the reduction in their capacity that is causing the businesses to lose revenues and ultimately put them in distress. And so we wanted to find ways that we could assist. And I spoke to the city council members, spoke to all six minus Paul Saunier, and in general, we had no opposition to presenting this utility fee waiver for local impacted businesses to city council this afternoon, with the intent that we would, as you see in the city in the report, we are looking to, the city has already waived late fees, disconnection fees, interest fees, and not sufficient fund fees for the next 2 months. We're already taking that action. That's an action that city staff and myself, city manager, can take. But one of the things we are looking at that could potentially impact our revenues is providing a fee waiver to our local businesses. With that, I spoke to Kip, and we wanted to understand what the fiscal impact would be of doing this for the city. And so he analyzed that and provided, you can see the maximum fiscal impact of that would be as much as $50,000 per month. For 2 months would be as much as $100,000 to the utility enterprise funds. And so we wanted to make sure, and if we expanded this beyond just our utility funds, it could be as much as $300,000. So if we did it for everybody, the maximum impact could be up to $300,000 per month, or $600,000 for May and April, or April and May. So what we did was take a look at what we could do, since the primary impacted individuals in terms of their revenues and businesses were businesses. We spoke to city council, and the intent was to focus this specifically on our local businesses, those that were impacted by COVID-19. There are several businesses that are actually larger businesses within the community that are actually doing better under these circumstances than they were before, for many different reasons that people are aware of. And so we would want to do it as for those businesses that are negatively impacted. We obviously wouldn't want to giving waiver to businesses that are actually doing better under these conditions wouldn't necessarily be something that city council would want to consider. They may. So I put that out there. The stipulations or the framework that we're talking about is providing a fee waiver to local businesses that apply for a fee waiver for the months of April and May. It would be waive their water and wastewater bills for the months of April and May, and it would be of the lesser of the average bill amount for use of water and wastewater, or a cap of $400. So it'd either be the average from their usage from 2019 in the months of April and May for this year, or it would be a cap of $400 per month. So a maximum of $800 for those 2 months. And so that's how we framed it right now. I will tell you that I've had some other recommendations. And we've looked at a large spectrum of potential business relief measures in addition to this one. One that was brought up that that if council is no longer in support of this, or they would like to see modifications, another option might be to follow the same structure, but maybe look at a deferment. So if you don't want to, so looking at deferment of revenues, maybe in terms of April and May, so they would just defer them to a June payment, and they would still pay the city for the water and wastewater services, but it would give them 2 months of relief to pay them. And in my discussions with staff, there's still risk. I mean, risk that you put these businesses at risk of not being able to make these payments in a future date if these conditions continue. So the city council has a couple options. They can either defer these and our businesses can pay these at a date in the future, and or we can actually put them on a payment plan, and or we can just waive their fees for these 2 months. If we waive them for 2 months, it's a maximum of about $100,000 based on our previous analysis of these 2 months for our local businesses. That's a maximum. That's if every business used had the same average usage. Every business took advantage of this. It would be be a maximum of $100,000. I have Kip here to answer any questions for you as well. Kip and I have been in discussion about this, and Jason can answer any questions as well.
Your Honor, if I could add, before we get started with the discussion, part of why we wanted to make sure we had this discussion for council to give us direction so that we're not creating a framework for this relief that council doesn't later end up approving or adopting. So based off of your feedback this evening, if something does pass, if this gets pushed on, that's your prerogative. But if something should pass, then staff has the framework that we can then work from to develop this program based on your guidance. And so that's why we're bringing it up sooner than later.
Thanks, Jace. Kip?
Kip, you there? Go ahead.
I thought, is Kip going to follow up, or where should we go?
I just have one thing to add, and that is this would also affect the stormwater management fund, because there's a small portion of utility bill that goes to drainage.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor?
Sir.
Thank you, sir. So Darren, I heard words about April and May of 2019. I'm looking at the staff report and the resolution. I don't see 2019 mentioned in here. Maybe I misheard. That's specific. You're on mute, Darren.
When you do an average, you're doing an average of, so when it talks about the average use, when you're talking about utilities, it's a seasonal analysis. So you have to look back the 2 months, two months in the previous year to determine how much water was used. So the average use and or the cap are the two measures. So the lesser of the two is the intent. So
No, I understand that. It's just that the language doesn't say 2019. It just says some April and some May. It's just a minor point, by the way. I'm just.
Well, if you have any other questions, I think that's the intent, is to look at either a cap or the lesser of, which would likely be the average use of that business in the months of April and May 2019.
So that's paragraph 3 on the staff report, and the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The fifth, whereas I would say there's a 2019 missing there. Am I incorrect?
We can certainly make sure it's clear that it's the lesser average billed for the amount of use of water and wastewater in April and May of 2019.
Thank you.
If I may, Mr. Mayor,
Please.
how do we define a Woodland Park business? I mean, maybe I missed it, but.
Would they have to hold a business license, Darren?
That's correct. Hold a business license, and we're talking about local businesses too. So the business would have to be a business within the
Located in our jurisdiction.
jurisdiction.
And how many might that be?
Oh, well, I can actually have Kip knows that number right at the top of his head in terms of total commercial billing that he has.
So in April and May in 2019, so I was basing my numbers off that. Water customers, commercial, 253.
So we're talking about brick and mortars?
The ones that would be using water and wastewater, correct?
And I guess my other question related to that would be, if they're closed, how much are we really impacting them? I mean, I understand we're using an average from last year for April and May, but that certainly wouldn't be anywhere close to what the number would be this year.
Correct.
So there would be there's a question that comes to mind for me is, with our businesses, maybe they're open and maybe they're closed, and maybe this is a benefit to them and maybe it's not. So if that's the case, then if they're not open, obviously they're still incurring some issues, but our goal is to give them some relief, right? And just trying to carry through. And there's also, we have citizens here that probably are struggling themselves because maybe loss of a job, or they may have a challenge in maybe paying all of their obligations as well. And there's relief out there federally, state, for things like mortgage and paychecks and things like that. So we don't need to talk about that. But maybe, I mean, there's also the option, and we've had this conversation about maybe a combination of maybe some forgiveness for our businesses that can provide some necessity, some impact in relief for their utility bills. I don't know that we could give them, should we, and this is a question to the council, should we give them relief if they're not incurring any expense? And then on the other hand, do we look at our citizens and maybe it's a combination of relief to our businesses that are feeling the effect and maybe some deferral to our citizenry that are having a hard time maybe paying their bills? That's just a thought. What do you think about that?
And Kelly, if I can, I'll chime in. So what you're proposing, I think, is a combination of the two discussions that I had before, and that is a potential fee deferral for a period of 2 months to all residents of Woodland Park, which means that they would ultimately pay that. And then
Right, and we could maybe give them some payment options at that time when it comes due, right?
And I'll tell you, we already do that on a case-by-case basis.
Absolutely, we do.
But this would be more vocal and more open about, hey, if you need a deferral, we will work with you and contact us.
Certainly.
And then the other piece would be adding this fee waiver for businesses that are impacted, that have tangible impacts from the COVID-19 closures and or Public Health Order 2024, and give them relief.
Yeah.
I want to, if I can, I want to comment about something I didn't bring up earlier, and that is Deb Miller and I did a business roundtable with a lot of the, let's say there were 12 businesses that were in that conversation. We also have done a survey that's went out to businesses, and I have 31 responses right now. And a lot of those different businesses, the 31 on there, and the businesses that we spoke to, do feel that this would be a good business relief measure if City Council were to pass it. So we are getting all positive. Have any negative feedback? I have had comments. Well, why isn't this applied to everybody in the city besides just businesses? That comment has come up, and I will tell you that's because if we did that would be an impact of $300,000 a month. And it would be much more significant in terms of its revenue impact to future capital and our ability to purchase water rights for the water utility. So I'd be careful with. I just wanted to be careful. A deferral, though, would mean we'd still get the money, it'd just be later in the year. So.
And it's about finding a way that we can help folks as their leadership, right? And without compromising. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people have a lot of ideas, but this seems like something that we don't have a lot of data yet as to how this is affecting people, really. I know I feel it. I mean, my industry is being whittled away every day by the governor. We have a new thing coming out this evening about my ability to conduct my business. So I feel it and I understand. So I just like to think about all of our citizens and our businesses as well, because they're all important to us. And if we can find a way to find some balance to help them all in some way, it seems like it's the right thing to do. Sorry to interject, and Mayor, I didn't even ask permission, so forgive me.
If I may, I don't feel like I got my question answered. I understand what the impact of this would be to this, but I'm trying to understand what the impact would be to those businesses if they're closed anyway. Are we really doing anything for them?
No,
That's what I'm trying to get at.
yeah,
You're right. If you don't mind, Mayor,
Please.
Councilmember Nacarado, the impact is minimal to those who are not using using our water or using our wastewater. It's there could be some impact of some capital fees that are still paid. It wouldn't be zero, but it wouldn't be as impactful as those businesses that have remained open and continue to conduct business within the city and use water and wastewater service.
And
that was a thought process already. Sorry, Mayor.
No, that's all good information. Just want to add a little something, big picture wise, if you will, and being in business like a lot of you are, know that March and April in terms of our revenues is one thing. April and May, starting June, July, August, those numbers increase exponentially. And if we approve a resolution, I know it can always be changed, but those numbers in June will vary dramatically from the numbers in April, and nobody knows how long this is going to go on.
Yeah, we don't.
And so just another fly in the ointment, if you will, in making this decision. This is such a tough, it's a tough decision. I think it sounds like we all agree we'd like to help our community the best we can.
Yep.
And two, we have to be very aware of what the impact is on our water and wastewater and our ability to provide services for our community. So there's going to be a fine line there. And so, there's a lot of food for thought here. And this discussion could go on for a long time. I don't know if we're in any position to approve anything today, but I'm not saying that we aren't. I just want to make sure that we look at everything that's involved in this decision, and then make that decision, knowing that we're not going to make everybody happy, and it's going to be an issue for all of us, like all of us that are in business right now. And I'm not an example that's unlike anybody else. If you're open in this time, you're probably going to be losing money every day. Those people that have closed are probably the smartest business people, because they don't have to incur the expenses of being open and having all those expenses. So to what Dar's saying, I totally understand where he's coming from, and who do we help, and do we have everybody apply individually and make those decisions on a case-to-case basis? All those questions I think we need to answer before we make any decisions.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, please.
Please.
Thank you, sir. So Darren, we've got two business people sitting right in front of me on my screen, both real estate people. They have a business. Where do we draw the line on this? They obviously are impacted business people too. They don't happen to have a brick and mortar. They have an office, but is there a definitive line for this? I know there's several businesses in town that already have their care checks in hand. But we've got two excellent real estate people sitting here who also have a business, I assume a business license. Are they included in the calculation here? I realize they work out of their home and different offices, but and they're not the only people in town like this, but I understand the Swiss Chalet. That's an easy one. That I can understand that one pretty easily.
Well, and those people like Kelly and Hillary, their water bill relative to some others, is minimal, and the impact is minimal. So I get what you're saying. That's why I think at some point we got to decide: is this on a case-by-case basis? Is the $20 that's saving Keller Williams? Do we go down that road, or is it more important that that the Swiss Chalet? That's a bad example, but one of the others that use $200, $300, $400, $500 in water a month or more, and where we draw the line there. And to my point, these are really hard decisions, and I wish somebody would be a scribe and have this all right in front of us that makes sense for everybody.
Well,
But it's difficult, Darren.
Mayor, yes, the city billing department makes these decisions every day. We work with our local businesses, with our local residents who might be in financial distress, and we offer payment plans already. So we do this on a deferment basis already. So
Right.
I'm confident the city has the ability to determine
Yeah.
who's in need and who isn't in need in terms of financial distress. We do that every single day in terms of water billing. Now, talking outside of those who don't, I mean, of course, utility and wastewater bills don't apply to those who don't have brick and mortar. They don't incur those costs. So yes, this is focused only on those brick and mortar facilities or those businesses within the city of Woodland Park, or even outside of the city of Woodland Park, as long as we're providing service to them. That's who this is meant for. And again, we've had several recommendations already that maybe we expand it to a deferral. I can do the deferral on my own in terms of, as a city manager, I have the authority to do that. But if the city council wants to move forward with a multi-pronged approach where you're looking at both a deferral for all residents for a period of 2 months and a fee waiver for brick and mortar businesses, that's a pretty comprehensive approach to addressing the issue. Has the same fiscal impact in terms of the $50,000 a month. We just see a delayed return on revenue after the month of June. And so lots of things to think about. I will say that there are a number of cities within the state of Colorado that are moving forward with the same type of measure. City of Castle Rock, City of Victor have done the same thing. And that it's been well received by the businesses. They have appreciated it. And it's something that the city is capable of doing without impacting our business, our ability to provide essential services and public safety to our community.
Mr. Mayor,
Please, Kelly.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Jason.
I just wanted to point out very briefly that this idea that's presented before you is not mutually exclusive. It doesn't prohibit or limit any future ideas being vetted or determined. I think from staff's perspective, it was something that was low-hanging fruit that was identified that could be done relatively quickly and moving forward. And I don't think that's intended to preclude future discussions or continued discussions as we figure out how COVID has impacted the community in various ways. So I would throw that out there, that this wouldn't prohibit future councils from taking additional action if necessary, as we continue to get information and thoroughly vet and try to determine what's balance that interest in what's the best interest for the community, and also what the city can actually do without putting taxpayer dollars at risk. Darren mentioned, if we do carte blanche relief to businesses, we could be giving businesses that are doing very well right now taxpayer dollars for no need. And so I think that's kind of important to the discussion, but I just wanted to make the point that nothing's finite. This council, the next council can continue to look at this issue as things continue to progress.
I'd like to hear from Hillary. You were the one of the leaders in this regard. Give me some thoughts.
So I mentioned with Darren talking about deferrals. Deferrals make me a little bit nervous because I'm not sure that everybody understands the difference between deferring their bill and waiving their bill. And it makes me nervous in a time like this that if they chose to defer a utility bill and then they have another economic crisis come up in their home, that it could possibly put them further behind. So deferrals make me feel a little uneasy. I'm all for it if the council supports it. I wanted the city to be able to support our businesses and our citizens during this time. And talking about using the utility fund, I know made Kip cringe, but at the same time, it's one of our most stable funds that we are able to look back on and look forward at and kind of know where we'll wind up at. So I had mentioned to Darren that if we did an overall deferral for citizens and businesses, and then perhaps had an application process for businesses that needed the fees waived for the next month or two, you know, would that be a possibility? And I want people who are listening to understand that this does not mean that all of a sudden council is going to quit looking at the possibility of lowering mills or lowering taxes, or we're not stopping at this. This is a temporary relief in the time of a crisis, and it's going to take us time to be able to look and see how this has impacted the city and spending and taxation. So it's a I don't know how to say it. This is going to come full circle for us one way or another. But I think what most of us or all of us see right now is that there is a crisis. It is impacting our city, our citizens, and our businesses. And being good stewards of our city, we should look out for our people and see what we can do to support them during this time. So I support deferring. I also support waiving. But that's up to all of us and up to how it will also impact our business as a utility fund as well. So, but I think it is an appropriate measure to take at this time, and it may seem small and insignificant to some, but it also may be helpful to others, and that's what we have to consider.
Yeah, well said. Well said.
I agree.
That being said, anybody have a great idea on how we move forward? We move forward with the resolution that we have in front of us. Do we want to make changes to this? Do we want to still consider all our options and move this process forward for the next council? What are your thoughts?
Mayor, if I can, I'll give you some options. Just the council right now. I mean, again, this is the resolution that's in front of City Council right now for approval or amendment. If City Council directs the city, we can move forward with a two month deferral on utility billing, if that's the way you want to go. So you can do a combination of both. And I would, if you want to, you can weigh in with Kip. Kip can express his distress in having that comment, but that there is those two options where you can do either just the resolution, you can do the deferral, or you can do both. That's exactly what Councilmember Labar has just recommended, and I think the city could support that and make that happen if City Council decided to do that tonight or today.
Mr. Mayor, I would say that I agree with Hillary 100%. I think it gives us some immediate relief to our constituency, our citizens, our businesses. And like Darren just pointed out, again, we're not cast in stone. We can adjust as we learn and we go along, and we see how this crisis evolves or not. There's a comment I see that says, why must a business have a Woodland Park business license in order to qualify for a utility cost deferral? Business would be a waiver in our proposal, number one, and the business license is our tool to know what the businesses we have out there. it's just a provision in our code right now. So that's how I would answer that question. And it's a tool for us to know who's out there and who is a business in our community. I would say that shh, excuse me, my dogs are about to have a hissy.
Feed 'em.
So anyway, to talk about what Councilmember Darwin Nacarado mentioned, they're not incurring costs because they're not open, then there wouldn't be a waiver to be given, right? I mean, that seems, I mean, am I being too simple, Kip? Support this, by the way.
Yeah, if they're not open, they're not accruing costs. It's just basically the capital charges on their bill for both water and sewer, and then drainage is an automatic just fee that is charged.
Right.
So, and I just kind of wanted to provide some facts for council because we've been tracking this for a while now, and to date, we have not charged any late fees or interest for those folks who have asked for some kind of relief because of COVID-19. And to date,
Right.
we've had 5 people inquire about COVID-19. Of those 5, one was a commercial establishment that actually paid the next day, and it was, I'll just say it was a franchise in town. So that was interesting. I don't know if they were just looking for something for nothing, but and then the other 4 were residential owners, and we worked with them, and we've kind of set them up on plans and pushed things back, and no interest, no late fees, and we do that. There's no disconnects as well. So you know, we truly do try to help where we can, and fortunately, the utilities are in a stable financial place to do that. And you guys all know me really well. I do cringe. So, and I appreciate the acknowledgement for that. But I would say to date, we're doing fairly well. If you want to change the resolution a little bit to help out with residential, then I'll need to look at the total amount per month, because a residential dwelling unit would not use up to $400 a month. And that $400 a month that's in the resolution is more geared towards your restaurants, a brewery, things like that. We do have some other commercial users that spend quite a bit more, but they aren't truly, I would say, impacted the way our businesses are. So it's a wide spectrum across the board as far as uses, but I just want to make it really clear that this would be a small business who has a commercial account with utility billing. That's
Excellent.
And Kip, just to
Excellent.
clarify what you're saying, the resolution wouldn't need to change. The resolution already has the lesser of the 2, average use and or the cap. So it would fall on the average use. And I don't think the city council hasn't mentioned this yet. They're not considering a fee waiver for every resident within the city. That's only a deferral that they're considering for residents. It's the waiver is still focused only on those local businesses that have a commercial account.
Yes.
Am I correct? Okay.
Yes.
Hey, Kip, I got a question for you. Based on what's going on and all the closures in town, what was the net difference in water usage this year versus last year in March?
So right now, water usage is way low. We're not selling much water right now.
Right.
We start seeing usage go up this time of the year because people are starting to landscape and do those type of things. Right now, demand's about 530,000 gallons a day, which is, I would say, about 70,000 gallons lower than normal, but it all depends on the conditions outside.
Sure.
So it's kind of a
How much of that-
catch-22. We're not selling any water. Once we start selling water, we're not gonna gain all the revenue that we normally would.
Well, and to put it into perspective, we used actually 11% less water in 2019 compared to 2018. So,
And Kip, with the pool being closed, is that, I don't know how much water they typically had used.
that's a little bit of a factor. It's probably around, I would say, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 gallons a day. less water, but there's other big commercial establishments that are closed as well. I could say Karis for one. They're not using a lot of water. They don't have a lot of people there.
So, Mr. Mayor,
Sir,
thank you. The language that Councilmember Labar mentioned to possibly add in here is the deferral. I think the city is doing their best to make case-by-case decisions. Did we want to include some deferral language in here or not?
Mr. Mayor,
well,
may
I think it's a great idea. Go ahead, Dar.
I was going to suggest that maybe to get the ball rolling, maybe we think about doing a deferral now. And then as we see how it goes, future council, I guess, if you will, can decide whether they want to actually turn that into a waiver or not. And it gets some immediately sort of relief going without really committing us to the full waiver at this point, and allowing essentially what's the new council to take that up.
I
That
think that's a-
waiver, for me, the waiver is a tough one. I like the deferral just because, and I know why Hillary's got some concerns with the deferral, but no one else is waiving anything for me. I mean, I guess that's not a great way to put it or defend my position, but you know, I still feel like as a businessman, and if I use water, if I use electricity, you know, that I'm responsible for that. And maybe I got to defer for 3 months, maybe I got to defer for 6. But to waive it is just not, it's just not the way I think. I get it. I get it for people that may not be able to ever pay that, but I wouldn't be a big proponent of waiving fees.
And Mr. Mayor, that was exactly my point, that perhaps we start with a deferral. I understand Hillary, Councilmember Labar's concern. I've seen businesses fail because they didn't understand accrual accounting. And, you know, wow, we got the cash in the cigar box, so we're going to spend it, and then the rent comes due. And so there are people who don't truly understand accruals and deferrals. But on the other hand, I do think it's a way for us to step into this and offer some form of relief in the form of the deferral. And then if it becomes appropriate, or if council deems that it's appropriate at some point to actually do waivers, or even do that on a case-by-case basis as well, then that's fine too.
Mr. Mayor,
Please.
maybe we start with the deferrals, and with the understanding that staff would have the ability to work with folks to get that deferred amount paid. What we used to do with sales tax and with water bills was agree to help people pay off past due balances and forgive the penalty. And then the agreement was that they keep current and pay towards their past due amount. And that seemed to work well for almost all of the taxpayers and the utility bills when I managed those two functions. It worked well, and people really appreciated that opportunity. So if we could, that's not a bad idea, Dar and Neil, to maybe start with the deferral for all of them, businesses and residents, with staff having the ability to work with them to get those deferrals paid when things open back up again.
Right, with no interest or no late fees.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, a couple banks that have really helped me out this last week is the fact that I've been able to defer mortgage payments with no interest for 6 months. And, you know, it's a big deal. And for me, it's a lot of money. But for people for on the $15 to $20 budget, if you will, it's a big deal for them too. So
Yeah.
I think deferral would be
Good place to start.
appreciated. I think it's a great place to start. I don't think it hurts us financially as much as just waiving fees. And I
Yeah.
agree with you. I think that's a great place to start.
There you
Your
have
Honor,
it.
If I might just make sure we're clarifying, still need to make sure that staff understands whether or not this would be a need-based application or if this is just carte blanche for all accounts. So i.e., are we going to ask people to provide some sort of proof or statement that they've been affected, or is this something that will be just given out to any utility customer? So that's a question that would be important for staff to understand. And I also want to make sure we do have some comments before a decision is made to make sure that we get to the public comment.
And we will, I think if people are willing to request the deferral, I think that they should qualify. When we start deciding whether if somebody needs the money or not, I think you put yourself in a precarious situation.
And I guess my suggestion is some sort of statement that they're providing to the city that I am indeed in need of assistance. I'm not anticipating that we'd go through and pick winners and losers from a staff perspective. However, if a year from now we find out that somebody was fraudulent in abusing the city's taxpayer monies, that's the boat that I don't want to be in.
Understand?
Makes sense.
Understand. That
So
needs
They
to be
certainly would
included
have
for
to
sure.
ask.
So we would make, so it sounds like it's moving in a direction of a deferral for up to 2 months, and that it would be a request-based deferral, but it would be open
Requested
to all,
deferral for 2 months.
but
Yes.
all, and it would be open to everyone with that is served by our water and wastewater utility service.
There you
That
go.
asks or chooses.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll pay my bill. I'm not going to take advantage of a deferral, just as an example. But it seems that if they want a deferral, they need to ask for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just like
They need
any
to
other
think that.
creditor would ask
Sure.
you to ask.
Is there
What kind of impact? Go ahead, Hillary.
Is there a way then that you could send out a notice to all of your customers? Because what I've found too is with all of the public service announcements we've been making and information we share, we typically tend to share online.
Mhm.
And a lot of those customers though are not, Facebook members and Nextdoor participants. So
I agree with you, Councilmember LeBar. I think the first thing we can do, and I'll have Kip weigh in here, is that it can be placed on the water bill itself. So, and so when they get a water bill, it can state that this can be deferred up to 2 months. Please contact, the water utility, and we will post it online, and we can publish it in the paper if so needed.
And then,
So
Sorry, go ahead, Kip, sorry.
no, go right ahead, sir.
So just to be clear, we because of the time element and we're trying to move this resolution forward, we're basically changing all the waiver language to deferral language so we can proceed with that. And then staff has a discretion on a needs basis to take those deferrals. Is that my understanding?
Yes, sir.
Jason, if you can weigh in, because I don't necessarily, these are things that we already do as a city. I don't know, does the city council need to actually even pass a resolution to do this, or just give me direction, Jason?
I guess if we're doing deferrals and it's going to match the current programming and policies as we have them today, I don't think an official new resolution would be required. If we're trying to do something that would be different against policy or outside of that scope, then a resolution would be necessary. But to your point, at this point, as I understand it, is we'll go a step beyond and publish what our current policy allows. People who have a hardship can apply for assistance through the city. And we'll have direction from council per this meeting as to what generally those parameters will look like.
So I just wanted to note that Debbie Miller commented, and I asked for clarification, that there are dollars available through DHS Community of Caring and other social assistance groups for individuals. Kim Mauve mentioned this today in a meeting of the team, the emergency response team. I asked her dollars for what? Just wanted to bring that into the conversation.
I think I understand where she's coming from. I'll address all the questions, Councilmember
Okay,
Tate, during
sorry.
public comment. But I think I know where those are entities that pay utility bills for businesses or residents in distress.
Right.
That's what I thought.
Just quickly, I was going to mention what Debbie Miller had mentioned, and like there's LEAP, which is assistance for heating and other things that you can qualify for. But I was going to ask on the utility bills, and this may be out of our jurisdiction or out of line, but if we could include a sentence to those people that they can contact the Department of Human Services or other organizations, and possibly include those phone numbers so that people would know who they could call and reach out to for further assistance. But I don't think
Absolutely.
it's beyond our jurisdiction to print that on a water bill.
Yeah, we're limited on how many characters we can put on the water bill. So that would just be, like, for example, when people have a hardship, they know to contact certain resources to help pay for their utilities. We can always try to put something on there, or just maybe put some more information on our utility page.
And over the COVID page that the city's running.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Mayor Levy, I have 2 public comments, not in the chats. These were mailed earlier to me. The first one is Rusty Neal, and he actually has mailed me something that he wants to speak to that he would like placed in the record. So I don't know if you're ready for that.
You know what, we've had a considerable conversation. We can come back to council. Why don't we go to the public comment now, and then we'll take all those and then come back and try to make a decision.
Okay, so first would be Rusty Neal. I can't see if he's in attendance.
He is, and he's got his hand up. So Rob, if you
Okay.
can allow him, if you can bring him in.
Okay, excuse me, I believe I am active.
You are.
You
Okay.
are.
All right, thank you very much. The first thing I do want to do is thank Ms. Case and Ms. Labar for providing the explanation that you did regarding the reason for this special meeting. It helped me resolve in my mind what the real purpose was, which is really this resolution. But I especially want to thank Ms. Labar for being so frank in talking to the issue of 858, that I had heard rumors that there was an underlying purpose for that. I'm glad it was tabled for the time being, but thank you for the explanation to the citizens. The second thing I'd like to do then is I do want to acknowledge and thank Darren. Our engagement began last night when I started telegraphing some of my concerns when I got the first copy of the draft resolutions. And my focus had been on Resolution 859. I thought that was the real intent of this special meeting, and I think you guys have confirmed it in my mind. I started telegraphing my thoughts to Darren last night. We set up a meeting this morning and had in my opinion, an exceptional conversation, a dialogue, open-minded, in which he has expressed several of the thoughts that I provided to him. And then what's interesting to me is the council, in listening to this whole dialogue, you have almost iterated on all the points that I'm about to present. I do want to read the document. I wrote it up. It's for the public record. So anybody that wants to see it, I think can see it. And the reason why I do want to beat a dead horse in what I would like to offer in terms of thoughts is there is a point that I think has been missed, and it's something that Darren and I did talk about, which did not come out in the conversation. And that is the connection between what the federal government is doing to help all citizens and businesses, and how it should be, in my mind, connected to the resolution that you are considering to include the deferment or waiver. So with that introduction, I'll go ahead and just read my letter. And
Excuse me, Mr. Neal.
yes,
I appreciate new information. If your letter is based on everything we've already talked about, if you could pick those things out, because we have a number of people to speak. Usually this is a kind of a 3 to 4 or 5 minute limit on this kind of conversation. And so I'm just asking you to keep it as brief as you possibly can, but still make your point.
will do. And as you know, my tagline when I ran for office was citizens first. So you're going to see a little bit of that incorporated into the thoughts. Okay. The options that you have presented, I'm not going to go over. That'll streamline this quite a bit, Neil,
Thank you.
because you did incorporate a deferral and then a waiver. The piece that was missing is the connection to some of the federal information. So I'm just going to go to that part, which is my paragraph 3 for those that eventually read this. And this is some background information to consider. The draft resolution was initiated and first considered prior to the $2.2 trillion CARES stimulus package being made public or being approved. No consideration of the provisions for individual, which would be the pandemic unemployment assistance, or small business relief programs, which include the Payment Protection Program, PPP, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, the EIDL, the SBA Bridge Express Loans, or the SBA Debt Relief, appear to have been considered by the city staff in providing their staff report. Again, time-wise, they came out after all of the discussions began at staff level, according to Darren, which is why there's no real connection. Individuals, small business, and even large businesses have the ability to recover most of their short-term, which I'm going to right now define as less than 2 months, losses with the phase 3 stimulus package, the CARES. A fourth phase stimulus package is already under serious consideration. Therefore, the stimulus amounts might even cover periods greater than just 2 months of loss. The only entities that are completely vulnerable to the financial crisis are the municipalities and counties if incorrect actions are undertaken too quickly or without careful balancing with other interests, such as debt, reduction in services. Whatever the approved resolution becomes, it must bring into consideration the effects of the CARES programs and fairness to all Woodland Park citizens. And one of the recommendations that I did put, and I'm jumping off script, was whatever is approved for small business, whether it's licensed or not, should apply equitably across all citizens, not just small businesses. And what I'm proposing can be applied to individuals as well as small businesses. Recommendation that the city council should consider rewarding the resolution to an initial deferment of utility fees. There's a phase for that. Then make application and adjudication for PUA, PPP, EIDL a prerequisite to deferment, for waiver consideration. And actual losses be established after PUA, PPP, EIDL have been received by the small businesses or individuals in establishing a loss. And then once a true loss has been documented, then apply the waiver to the residual loss. And lastly, to make it applicable to all citizens and businesses equally. In conclusion, I believe a loss must be established after all federal government programs have been applied. And that's to keep the city whole. This is to Kip's point. We have to keep the money that we have coming into us because we have no recourse as a municipality. Businesses and citizens do, thanks to the government program. Anyway, the deferment will provide time for programs to be fully implemented by the federal and state governments so that true losses can be documented. Money is flowing, especially to small businesses. It takes less than an hour to complete the application and less than a day to actually receive the money. The only portion within the care package is the individual pandemic unemployment assistance that has not become available online. If anybody goes out and checks, that one is still hung up at the state level. But small businesses, it's active, the money is flowing. Concluding, citizens first, fairness to all. Thank you.
Thank you.
You make some good points. You make some
I agree.
good points, Mr. Neal. I've actually, I had my PPP application in on Monday. Haven't received monies yet. The beauty of that money, for people that don't know and should know, is that it's free money. They don't have to pay it back.
Exactly.
The other two have to be paid back, but at a low interest rate, and you can almost name your own terms. That the PPP is something that most people, I don't even think, know about. And so how do you, if you will, get the word out on the PPP, get all the information, all the things you want done, and get all that information out, and still be able to help our local businesses in this time of need today. And so that's my concern with what you're saying. I agree with you. I'm very well aware of the programs, as are a lot of people. Many people are not, and how long it takes them to become aware and knowledgeable and go through that process is something I think that we need to consider.
And I agree. And I do think that the combination of the instantaneous deferral, which Darren already has the authority to do, buys the time to get the information to the businesses on the PPP. It's an unbelievable program that every business, it's like you said, Mr. Mayor, it's free money to the small businesses that they don't have to pay back. But
Mayor.
they do need a little bit of time, and that's what the deferral upfront phase buys us until we get to looking at waiving true losses. Thank you.
And that was
Thank you.
my
Thank
point
you, Darren.
of the
Yeah.
deferral.
Who was next? Darwin?
Yeah, it was me.
No,
But
go
I
ahead.
was, sorry. Okay. I don't disagree. And, I think I usually approach these issues trying to mitigate the potential impact, long-term impacts to the city and its revenue. So I don't disagree with it. The only thing I would couch that discussion with is the science of what's called decision architecture or behavioral economics, where if you put too many obstacles in the way, you won't have anybody take advantage of this benefit. And that's essentially what we're saying. And that is what you are attempting to achieve, is to have fewer people take advantage of the benefit to keep the city more whole. It's really a balancing decision for city council. If you put a bunch of obstacles in the way and prevent people from actually ultimately using this benefit, or do you eliminate those obstacles, the bureaucracy of those obstacles, and make it easier for them? That's your decision. But I will tell you, if you put those obstacles in the way, you definitely will have less people taking advantage of this benefit.
No question about it.
Can I just
Darwin? Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Who's next? I think Dara's next.
go ahead?
No, I was just reiterating, that's exactly the point of my suggestion with regard to doing a deferral program.
Yes.
And see if it needs to be morphed into a waiver at some point. It gives the city more flexibility, and it gives us a whole lot more information too.
And it
I
makes
agree
the
with Dar.
business take more responsibility.
Yes.
Kelly?
I agree with Dara. I just wanted to say.
Yeah.
Okay. Susan, go ahead.
Hillary.
Rusty, I think your points are excellent and very, very well taken. I agree with you. Just so that you're aware, council did put together a letter that we shared with every business organization we could think of and the Chamber of Commerce that included a link or direct phone numbers to assistance with the CARES Act, the SBA, and a number of other organizations that were assisting financially with businesses and other financial help. private citizens didn't necessarily get the letter, but we tried to go through every avenue we could to get the letter out to at least our business organizations up here. The other thing, though, is I do agree with asking for help from the entity that the problem came from in the first place, right? Like it's really the country. The president is where it started, and the governor, and then it trickles down to the rest of us. So yeah, you want to start with things like the PPP and the Congress Cares Act. But the thing is because we're so small and intimate, we know the people that are going to be hurting before they can even probably get their applications approved online through this giant conglomeration of a system. So I would agree that it would be great if they could get assistance through the feds first, state second, and us last. But I think because we're so intimate and we understand our community so well, I think that we are the front line in being able to assist with help if we're able to do so. And like I said, our ability to assist is much more insignificant than Congress or even the state. But I think if we are able to do so, we should. And let me caveat that by saying, I think that we should do so because it is in the interest of the safety and health of our citizens during a pandemic. This is an emergency and a crisis and a different situation. I am not typically the type that believes in just welfare or helping for the heck of it kind of thing. I don't really know how to phrase it more professionally than that, but I do believe that a crisis is our responsibility, and it starts at the lowest level as well because we are the most intimate with those that are affected by it.
And I absolutely agree with you, Hillary. And again, that's why the immediate recommendation for Darren to be able to grant the deferment, that's immediate. And then we follow up while we bought some time for the federal programs to kick in so that it doesn't become just a welfare system. And I'm trying to balance out the interests of the city and its debt and services against not just the small businesses. This would apply for the individuals too.
Rusty, I appreciate it. We've got to move forward.
Yes, I'll shut up.
Suzanne?
Thank you, Mayor Levy. I did have an email submitted by Patricia Stinner, but she is satisfied with all of the discussion that she's heard and does not need any questions addressed.
Do we have anybody else for public comment?
Yes, Suzanne, I just want to make sure she's made several comments on the Q&A as well. She said those questions have been satisfied.
Yeah, Patricia Stinner, she sent me an email just a few minutes ago saying we didn't need to read her stuff into the record and she was good.
Okay, Mayor, I'll read. Deb Miller has some comments. I believe Tanner Coy has some comments I can make. Just if you don't mind reading those for the purpose of your decision. Deb Miller states, on behalf of the chamber, we are thrilled you are considering this resolution 859 for our business community. Deb Miller also say there's a big difference for our businesses. And lastly, I think she was talking earlier about those what Patricia Stinner was talking about in terms of I'm sorry, those social services or those nonprofits that provide funding for utilities. Those dollars are for rent, utilities, and food. And so those were Deb's comments. Deb also has her hand up, so if we could bring her in, Rob, I'd appreciate it. Deb, you're unmuted. We can't hear you, Deb.
How about now?
Yes.
Now.
All right.
Sorry about that. I wanted to follow up, Rusty, I appreciate the comments you've made. I wanted to follow up with some of what the mayor has said. We have been pushing for the last couple of weeks, the EIDL loan, the PPP loan. We've been working with Senators Gardner and Senator Bennett. Last week, we sent information out directly as a result of a request from both senators to tell our businesses to act now, not to wait to do these loans. There's only a certain amount of money going around, and so it was important to be prepared. Unfortunately, our banks didn't have all of their information ready until Friday. Each bank is dealing with the PPP differently, each lender, but they are following the SBA guidelines along that as well. We just got a contact that I forwarded to Darren. He is our Colorado SBA contact. So if our businesses have comments or questions regarding their process of their loans, that we can get with this particular gentleman and look at where we're at with all of this. We are on webinars consistently 2 to 3 times a day with either the U.S. Chamber or other business organizations trying to look at this. Darren and I are on the same county economic recovery group as well. Darren's well aware that there are other communities in the state of Colorado that are doing much more extensive things that won't work for our community. Grand Junction, Vale, others are actually looking at doing some other things for their businesses. This is a particular thing that I believe the city can do, and a deferment will certainly help our businesses with that as well. And I like the path that you're going down, but we do have the information out there. We are working individually with all of these businesses, and certainly we have worked together to provide both the employer resource, the employee and citizen resource, and other resources as well. Thank you.
Excuse me, Deb, before you leave, explain to people about the PPP and how you associate it with your bank. So in other words, if you're associated with Vectra Bank, for instance, and they don't have a PPP app out yet, how do you apply, knowing what you said, that the money's going to run out fast? Do all the banks have their apps already available? What does that look like?
It's my understanding they do. Each individual bank has a certain application they want you to fill out to begin with. They will end up having to submit to SBA under certain guidelines. So they'll take what you have and what they've asked you to submit, and they'll submit that to SBA. But I do know, even if you go on the SBA site right now and you ask for your region, a particular lender, the SBA site is not up to date with our lenders in our business. You're, for the most part, probably working with a lender. Call them first. They will guide you, and or your accountant will guide you to the place that you need to go. So reach out to those people to help. And if I can, Mayor, there's one thing I do want to follow up with here, and that is the business interruption insurance for businesses right now. Anecdotally, the word is on the street that if you file, you're going to be turned down. I was on the phone with the the Colorado State Insurance Commissioner last week, and he pleaded with all of us to have our businesses file. They need that data from the insurance companies to show that they've been turned down. Each state insurance commissioner has to then go and lobby to the federal groups to look at, they're actually considering some measures that were taken back during 9/11 to help us figure out how we can backfill this omission in business interruption insurance. But if a business just says, well, I think I'm going to be turned down, that doesn't supply the data that we need. So we need businesses to do that as well. And we are reaching out and letting our businesses know that.
No, and that's great stuff. You guys have done a great job in that regard. Some people, there's a lot of misinformation, like you said. Here's what we all know for sure. There's some great opportunities for us all out there in the business community and in the private community, but we need to take care of them, and we need to take advantage of them, and need to do it as soon as possible. I haven't heard anybody get money back the same day, like Mr. Neal said, but in that PPP program. But I know the monies are being distributed very quickly, and could be an asset to everybody that applies. So thanks for all your information that you've sent out, and I know it's been of benefit to a lot of people. I'm just hoping that they're taking advantage of it. Thank you. Darren, we got one more.
Yes, well, I think you might have another one. Real
Okay.
quick, I will say that there's been a couple comments. Stephanie Alfieri was making some comments about, I'll just read them verbatim. The business owners needs to contact their institution or local SBA lender. Not all banks have the ability to accept or process these types of loans. Please refer everyone to speak to their financial institutions directly. There's a lot of misinformation, which you were talking about these loans and slowing the process significantly. I will say, I'll bring up some comments from Tanner Coy. Thanks very much for all you for stepping up during this challenge. It's heartwarming and reassuring and an otherwise lonely time to watch you put so much effort into finding ways to help everyone. Very much gratitude for what you've done today. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else on public comment?
yeah, if I can, Suzanne, did we have did Robert Zulaga need to was he wanting to make a comment on this particular issue?
Darren, let me look here. He wanted to talk to the council policies and procedures, and so the mayor put a kibosh on that until next time.
Okay, he did just raise his hand, so I guess we'll bring him in.
Okay, he might have something different now.
Yeah, Mr. Zulaga, I just encourage you. We're speaking only on resolution 859 right now.
I just posted up.
Okay. Oh, you did?
Yep.
You can hear me now?
Okay.
Very good. Can you hear me?
Yes, Mr. Zulaga.
Very good. Mr. Mayor, very nice to see you. All the best with your health, sir.
Thank you.
I just wanted to simply weigh in. I posted here in the questions how to apply for the SBA PPP, the disaster relief. There's a short YouTube by an accountant, and he walks the small business person through this process very simply. It took me less than an hour to actually go to the SBA site, fill out the questionnaire, and have it submitted. I did it last Saturday. I haven't seen the results into the bank yet, but I was surprised how simple it is. So if you want to post this, and my thought was simply, I know that Deb Miller, it sounds like you've worked with sending out to the small business people that you know. What if we posted in the Courier some of the solutions and the reach out places for the citizens? So do something like this for the SBA, put something like for the unemployment and for the relief to the citizens, have a place where they can go from the local newspaper and act on it. So you reach many people with one stroke. Those are my only comments. You guys have done a fabulous job here this afternoon. So kudos to you. And that's all my comment.
Take note, because you get to start here soon.
I've started now, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Okay, Suze, we got anybody else?
Not that I'm aware of, unless Darren has any hands up or anything.
I don't see any right now. I will say that Deb Miller we're working with Teller County doing a webinar tomorrow for everyone on unemployment. So she just made that comment. I want to say that I guess Councilmember Labar got kicked out, and we're trying to get her back in right now into the webinar. So if you could please wait for a second.
We'll wait for a second. In the meantime, I'm going to close public comment, and we can continue our council discussion on how we move forward. We've got a resolution in front of us that needs to be amended a bit relative to the deferring process. Does somebody want to step up and provide some language for that? Because I think everything else, it sounds like we're all in agreement with.
Mr. Mayor, if you wouldn't.
Sir.
Thank you. My understanding was Jason sort of said we don't have to do anything, but I would defer to our city attorney to clarify my misunderstanding.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to hear, I guess. I asked the wrong question. Thank you.
Yeah, if we're going with just what our standard practice is today, which includes the ability for the city manager to do deferrals on a as-needed basis, then we don't need to do anything. If we're looking at creating this program and implementing it and allowing the ability for later waivers, et cetera, then we might want to make it a little bit more formalized. It depends on what council's looking to do this evening, whether it's encourage folks to get in touch with their utilities department and work it on a case-by-case basis, or whether you're wanting staff to just define an entire program with applications, et cetera. One of the things I wanted to add, and I appreciate Mr. Neal's comments on the back side of this, as far as assessing who actually needs it and doing the potential calculations of actual loss, et cetera. One of the things to keep in mind as we're looking at moving forward is the limited staff that we have, and we don't necessarily want to create more staff time to administer this than it's worth. I don't know what that balancing point is, but the more complicated we make this, the more staff hours and time and resources are dedicated to administering the program, then there is relief being given.
And
I
that's
feel
what-
like staff is going to be less inundated. Darren, Kip, Jason, everybody, if we just leave the process as it has always been, or if staff has to come up with a whole new process to manage this. I can
Well-
imagine, I can imagine 500 applications for deferral coming in, and are we going to be able to manage that relatively easily, or is that going to be an issue? I don't want to put too much on staff, although I know they've got some work ahead of them.
I'll defer to Kip on a portion of this. I will say that he has communicated that exactly what Jason has said, is that we want to keep this simple so that we don't require Judy and our billing department to have to do a lot of additional work to qualify people for this. But I'll let Kip weigh in, because he has a more intimate understanding of what those requirements are. I think if you keep it simple, keep it as existing policies. We're already doing that. Judy knows how to make that happen pretty quickly, but I'll let Kip weigh in, because I think it's important that he talk about that.
Thank you. Yeah, Judy's still here working, 8.5 hours a day with things. Her call volume has slowed down a little bit because we're not out changing meters, but she's able to catch up on other duties. And I'm also out a utilities technician that's assisting with Teller County in the COVID-19 response stuff. So it would be pretty difficult to put in additional work hours for staff to review applications and do that kind of assessment. I believe that if people need help, they can call just like they do now, but whatever council desires, we can try to accommodate the best we can.
Okay, thanks, Kip. Council, do we have Hillary back yet?
She is.
It sounds like, and someone will correct me if I'm wrong, that after all this discussion, the resolution that we have in front of us is one that is amiable to everybody at this point, knowing that it's going to be a fluid situation. The new council may have to change some things. We're trying to make this as
Stop.
I'm sorry?
Nothing.
Are you talking to your dog or to me?
Talking to my dog.
Okay.
They're yelling at me. It's dinner time.
Well, that's just my point. We're 2 hours into this meeting, and even though we're in our own beds or our own homes, I think we've had great discussion, and we've arrived at a point, I think, right now that there's not much to add. So that said, if anyone has anything to add, I'd love to hear it. If not, I'd like to hear a motion to approve Resolution 859.
Your Honor, if
Mr.
I
Mayor,
could.
are we going to do waivers?
My understanding was we were deferring this because the standard practice works for us right now with Kip and everybody else. I think that's what Jason said.
That's what I understand also.
So I think the resolution
waivers.
goes by the wayside.
Yes.
I'm sorry?
I think the resolution is not being considered at this time because we're not going to do waivers at this point.
It's a historical document.
Or it can be brought up in the future as a next step, I guess. If I can, I'll kind of, I know Jason may want to, I'll characterize what I'm hearing so that I know I have clear guidance from City Council. The intent is to more broadly advertise our current policies and procedures to the community, likely through our through the social media, through our water billing system, our actual statements that go out, and as well look at putting this likely in the paper if we can, so that more people understand that this is an opportunity for them to defer their water bill for up to 2 months, and us arrange potential payment plans with them if necessary.
And they need to ask,
Correct.
Yes.
right? They need
Yes.
to ask,
Yes.
just like you would with any other creditor.
The same
And I
policy
don't-
we have today.
Yeah, I would just like to comment that while I appreciate Mr. Neal's comments and thoroughly agree, I just don't think that we are qualified or the ones to vet those situations. I think that's up to the individuals, and that if they feel the need to ask for our assistance, that it's there. Just what I take away from that. Thank you.
Thanks, Kelly. Anybody else? I think we've had good discussion. I want to thank Hillary and I'm not sure, I guess I thank everybody, but Hillary for first and foremost bringing this to everybody's attention and having the hearts and souls of our business community in mind. And it's very, very much appreciated.
Yes.
And so this is obviously, to me, and I know that I won't be in this seat for long, but this will be a first step in a process that could go on for a while. So everybody that's listening, everybody that's involved, just know that we're doing everything that we can for the community, and as long as that's the underlying approach, then I think we're going to continue to get this thing right. So thank you all for your hard work and consideration, and tell me what else I need before we get a motion to approve.
No, we don't need to.
Yeah, there's no motion or resolution
Okay.
necessary. Staff has
All
direction.
right, thank you very much. If it's okay, we're going to move on.
Yes.
And Rob, if you want to put the agenda back up, I can get it back on my phone. Okay, I've got it now.
Reports.
Mayor's report, I've actually got nothing. I want to congratulate all those that were elected to office yesterday and wish them the very best of luck in the next 2 to 4 years, whatever your term is. And thank you for your upcoming service to our community. It's very, very much appreciated, even though, and I speak from experience, even though sometimes it doesn't seem like it, your hard work makes a big difference in our community. So thanks to all those who got elected. Thanks to all those who ran for office. And there's always opportunities for all of our community to give back. And I think everybody will agree. We've got a great place to live, and everybody here can help us be a little bit better without being divisive, without being difficult, with conversations exactly like the one we had today, because you can really get things done when people are working together. And so I appreciate that, and that's all I got. I'll move on to Val.
Thanks, sir. I likewise appreciate all the citizens who came out to vote. Apparently we set a record. I guess Suzanne will bring that up. I appreciate everybody voting for all the candidates that they did, and in this environment that we were all brave enough to either mail our ballot in or walk it in. On my own personal behalf, I'm very grateful for being elected mayor, but I'll have more to say about that at some other time. But I'm very grateful for this community. I think we're going to have a good start when we get finally sworn in, and I look forward to working with all of you. The only other thing I would say is we had a Keep Woodland Park beautiful meeting, and we're still looking to do the cleanup, but that's all to be determined. There's a lot of city resources that are to be called upon, in addition to lots of volunteers, and of course the edicts of our state and our national for spacing and things like that. So there's yet to be determined. We're very determined to go forward with our cleanup And if that means if there's one person per block, I guess that's what it'll mean. But thank you very much for all the wonderful citizens we have out there and all the great
Thank you.
volunteers.
Kelly?
That's all I got, Mayor. Thank you.
Me? I have nothing, sir.
You
Thank
have
you.
nothing. Hillary?
I have to remember to unmute myself. I just wanted to say it's been a real pleasure serving with you, Neil. It's been great to get to know you, and I'm glad that you were here today with us. And I just hope that everybody looks out and cares for each other during this time. And if there's anyone listening that knows of anybody who may need assistance and they're not on the internet, that they're welcome to pick up their phone and call any one of us. And we are all well connected enough that we can get them the services they need during this time. So thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Hillary. Darwin?
Mr. Mayor, can I have a go back?
You can have a
Sorry,
go
I
back.
wasn't ready.
Okay.
Ready. I just have to acknowledge my dear friend, longtime friend, and it's been an honor serving with you, Mayor Levy. And you're in my thoughts and prayers all day, every day. And thanks to everyone for a super campaign, super election. And I look forward to serving with everyone and moving forward. And everyone, please stay safe, follow the guidelines we've been given, and we'll get through this sooner than later. So thanks for letting me go back, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Kelly. Darwin?
Well, I just don't want to waste time reiterating what Ms. Case just said, but I feel the same way, Mr. Mayor. And also thank everyone for voting and setting record, as Mr. Carr said. That was heartwarming to see. I happen to have had need to be out yesterday, which that's really unusual for me because we've stayed locked up inside as per the guidelines, and happened to drive right through in front of City Hall and saw a large line of cars dropping off ballots. And I was just so pleased to see that. So thank you to all the citizens. Thank you to all the people who were candidates, and congratulations to the winners. I look forward to great things from your council. Thank you.
Thanks, Dar. I think that's it. We don't have a Noel, we don't have a Paul. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we will move on to the city's attorney report. Looks like he doesn't want to say anything else.
I just briefly add, appreciate council and the public working with us as staff as we strive our best to keep things functioning as we are in lockdown as it were with this COVID-19. We're doing our very best as staff to provide information in a prompt and timely fashion. In that vein, I wanted to remind council for next week's meeting that we're looking at the potential of having another resolution to remote work as well, something that we didn't anticipate this necessarily lasting this long. So we have folks that are wanting to utilize the building department services and have those quasi-judicial issues moving forward. And as of right now, we have no way to facilitate that. So I just wanted to make sure that council is aware that's coming, and also the public is aware that that's coming, that we're looking at.
Thanks, Jason. Thanks for all your hard work. Certainly today, in the last couple of days, a lot of tough issues, and I think you've managed them well, as you always do. And we're very grateful to have you on board. So thanks very much. Darren.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to reiterate some of the things that just one thing that Jason said. We've gotten some really good comments from the community and our local construction companies and business builders about remaining open and still providing the permitting process and allowing those essential construction services to continue within the community. So it's been really appreciated from the comments that I've received from our local construction businesses. So we're doing it in a remote fashion. So we're still keeping our employees and those who are involved in those activities safe. So I just wanted to emphasize that. My report, I'm going to talk real quick because we don't get a lot of opportunities to provide updates to the community in terms of COVID-19. So I'd like to provide a quick update on COVID-19, and then I'd like to pass it off to Emily to provide a latest update on the February sales tax report, and then to Suzanne on her election update. So for me, as everyone knows, the mayor passed emergency declaration on March 17th, and the city council extended that on March 18th. On March 18th, the city closed 3 facilities that included the UPass schools were drained to reduce electricity and chemical costs during the closure. So we're looking at ways to save money while those facilities are closed. City Hall was closed on March 18th as well. We're continuing to provide essential services more in a remote fashion, so we are still can be contacted in all of our departments and still be able to conduct engagements with our residents and do business transactions. We're also, like I said, we're continuing to issue permits for construction projects, business licensing, collection of sales tax and use tax, Many of our employees are working remotely or in staggered shifts in City Hall to ensure that we maintain 6 feet of social distancing underneath the, and we're continuing to provide essential services as it is defined under Public Health Order 2024. So that includes public safety, that includes infrastructure. So when people complain about seeing our road utility worker, road personnel out fixing potholes and they're 6 feet apart, they're also preparing to go out and plow our streets so that our ambulances and our first responders can get to your homes and provide public safety. So there's always, concerns about that, but there is a reason why they're out there. I also want to talk about, we closed down the playgrounds, equipment, and public restrooms in our parks because we could not assure that that those have been sanitized on a recurring basis. So we could certainly get them there, but they'd have to be there almost all the time to ensure that our playgrounds and our restrooms are sanitized in a way that would help prevent COVID-19 exposure. So those have been closed, and some of that is actually as a result of Public Health Order 2024. 34 employees, part-time employees, were furloughed on April 1st. Those are primarily in Parks and Recreation departments where our facilities were closed. Those employees are still our teammates, and they will still go out now they're eligible to receive unemployment benefits. And once this passes, we fully intend to bring them back as our teammates. 3 police officers, since this COVID-19 issue has come to light, this pandemic, have been quarantined. 3 of our police officers. Just want City Council to know that. None of them have tested positive for COVID-19. I'll let Emily talk about our sales tax, our municipal court arrangements. Our municipal court has been closed to cases and hearings from now until, I believe, Suzanne, if you could correct me, the judge just extended that date to a new date.
Yeah, she had Judge McClintock hasn't put out the official order yet, but her intent is to bring it to the second week of June. So the first court date in June would be the second Wednesday, that date. I do have to say, Carla has been extremely busy. She is down there servicing all of the citizens and giving them their, helping them with their plea agreements, helping them arrange payments. And it was really kind of cool to be in the office with her and just watching her so busy right now.
Thanks, Suzanne. Lastly, I sent City Council a list of items that I intend to freeze within the budget amount of about $450,000. That is until we get a chance to really understand the economic impact to our general fund revenues. We anticipate we will get that information on or about April 20th, a little after April 20th when it's remitted. I will let Emily talk about where she sees us right now. Emily's very optimistic. I'm pessimistic, so we can balance both of us on where you think we're gonna be. But some pretty good news coming out of sales tax. But again, we have the potential for a loss in March from our previous projections in the budget. So with that being said, I will hand it over to, I'm sorry, Councilmember Case.
Yes, I'd just like to add and ask this council that I'd like to add the line items in the City Council's budget to the freeze, if they would agree with that, please. I think we support the effort.
I did include that in the list, Councilmember Case, and if everyone's, I know that Mayor Pro Tem Carr asked to potentially consider the 3 new members of City Council for CML, if the CML conference actually is conducted in person.
We can address that then. Can we address that at that time?
I believe so. I can bring it back to City Council if and when the CML conference is identified as continuing, and we can move forward that way if that suffices. So, okay.
That might be my desire. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Subject to any questions, I'm going to hand it off to Emily so she can, if you look in your packets, you can see the February 2020 sales tax report. Emily?
Thank you, Darren. Yeah, so included in your packet is the report. So it'll be brief. It's actually good news. So it's nice to hear some good news that February was 28% up over 2019. And then we are 20.5% up year to date. So that is nice to see. And lodging tax is down about 2% year to date. Of course, we expect that to continue to decline due to people not traveling and the stay-at-home order, et cetera. But Darren mentioned I'm optimistic. I'm cautiously optimistic because of, we did reach out to the large retailers, grocery retailers in town. And we do have 4, plus we have a small natural market. And they are all reporting way above normal sales for March. So we will see where that puts us, of course. As Darren mentioned, the taxes are due on April 20th. So it will take a little bit of time once those are submitted by that due date to actually enter all of them. And then I'll have that report as soon as possible after the 20th. And lastly, I just wanted to thank Mayor Levy. It was really great to work with you. I didn't get a long time to work with you, but very impressed by you, and your love and dedication to the community is just extremely impressive. So thank you.
Thank you, Emily.
Suzanne?
Yes, I'm coming. I figured I'd show my face for my section. I'm not saying goodbye to Mayor Levy because that is going to be reserved, our closing remarks, for April 16th. I want to, before I talk about the election, let's talk a little bit about the April 16th meeting, which is next week. My intention is to go forward with the meeting, not have a reception, and not do the gifts that we have for the council, to save that for a later date when the public can all get together and gather. But my intention is to have on the agenda the closing remarks from the outgoing council members, and then swearing in the new council members, them taking their seats and all. So I'm going to reserve my goodbyes for Mayor Levy for that night, although I know it's not goodbye because he and I are good friends, and we will continue to be good friends. Regarding the election, I'm really excited. The election was great. I would like to first congratulate the new winners and the new council-elect and new mayor-elect, and look forward to working with all of you. And wanted to say it was a challenging election, having an election during a pandemic. It was really kind of interesting. We had different challenges with the judges. As you know, council, we lost some of our judges, decided they didn't want to do it. And so we had 4 citizens that were judges, and we had 4 of our furloughed employees that were judges. So it gave them the opportunity to make a couple of bucks. And boy, did they like it. We had one young man who was a lifeguard at the pool, and he was just amazed with what went on in an election. He just really enjoyed it. The judges, I could not have done it without them. They were amazing. And when we are able to be in public together, I would like to acknowledge the judges and everyone in front of the council. So I'll save the comments for then. As someone mentioned, we did have a record. It was really exciting. We had a record high turnout. We had 32 more ballots received than last election. So we had 2,232 ballots. And last election, we had 2,200 ballots. So that was exciting because ballots were looking, as all of you know, they were coming in pretty scarce in the beginning. And the people, the community, really, like Darwin was saying, they really came out. We had incredible traffic in front of City Hall. I was so grateful that we made the move to get the ballot box outside. That was one of the best decisions that we made. I stood there about 10 to 7. So about 6:50 last night, I stood out there as the people were driving up, dropping off their ballots, making sure everyone's ballot was signed before they put them in the box so we could count them. And the people really like the box too. We're going to take the box down because we don't want it to add confusion when the election occurs in June for the county. We don't want it to add confusion for them, people putting in county ballots. We actually got ballots of ours that were dropped off in Cripple Creek. They were dropped off at the DMV. So we collected ballots yesterday from different locations. The other thing I'm grateful for is that we had clear winners. We didn't have, it was just very clear when the results came out of the machine last night. We didn't have to talk about recounts or any of that kind of thing. So that was exciting that the individuals were elected and they were elected clearly. Also, the last 2 days, I want to mention we serviced 66 people outside of City Hall. It was an interesting way of doing business. People would come and they would knock on the door, and Christy up front would go to the door and see what they wanted. And we serviced 66 people for election matters. We would go outside and take care of them and help them. And that was all fun, and the community really appreciated it. Last I'd like to say is for the April 16th meeting, we will have one QJ matter that I'm aware of, and it's for, if you all remember the old Burger King, it's for the restaurant that's going into the old Burger King. It will be for their liquor license. And that's all I have.
Okay. I have nothing else on my agenda. Unless we have any other comments or anything else that needs to be added, Darren, we will adjourn this meeting. I appreciate everybody's comments and look forward to April 16th. And once again, congratulations to the winners yesterday, and look forward to working with you all, as I've told a lot of people, just because, I'm not going to be the mayor. I'll always, always feel like I'm a part of this community and have been for 30 years. So I'm not going anywhere, and I'll be looking for opportunities to help in any way I can. So that said, you all have a great night. I really appreciate it. And we'll see you next week.
Nice to see your smiling face.
Good night.
Bye-bye. Chicken. Gotta have it.